What's up, everybody? Andrew Cooper here. This is Coop's Fantasy Football Fiasco. And I know you've become accustomed to these being psychotic solo 1 hour shows where I just rant about stuff. And last week was that as well. We talked about tight end because tight end's my position. But as we get closer to the season here and deeper into best ball and all that, I want to bring on some guests, right? So, next few shows, we're going to have some guests. Today, my guy Theo Gremminger from Player Profiler, the OG Fantasy, one of the few people that I really started podcasting with, honestly, coming on your show, hanging out with the GOAT District and the gang. So today we're going to talk some QB ADP with Theo. Next week we're going to talk running back ADP with Heath Cummings. And then after that, wide receiver ADP with Marcus Grant. So pretty loaded slate. But before we get to all that, Theo, how you doing, brother?
I'm happy to be here. Love podcasting with you. Big fan of what you're doing. And I'm in the best ball streets. I'm
Right.
on Underdog like you are. What else are you going to do this time of year? So I'm excited to kind of talk about, some of these quarterbacks. Really fun year.
Yeah, and we've been doing underdog drafts every Wednesday. That's the game plan over there. On this show, we're gonna mix it up a little bit because there's a lot of different places to play, and there's some big advantages when you look at ADP, right? When you look at all the different sites, underdog, whatever, RT Sports. Today, we're gonna look at FFPC, which it's that's the place where I play all my dynasty. I play a lot of high stakes. Theo and I last year made some money with our scorching hot play, and we actually opted to parlay that into a $350 buy-in into the fantasy
We're running
pros.
it back. We're running
We're
it
running
back.
it back. Yeah, yeah. We're letting it ride. That's what it is. Let it ride. Instead of cashing out, we're going to go in again. So that'll be a show that we're going to do. But for today, let's get into some ADP. We're going to look at FFPC. If you're not set up over there, you can use promo code COOP. Go over there. When you deposit 35 bucks or more, they'll give you 25 bucks. What's up, chat? Thank you guys for popping in. Joey Wright, what's happening? Well. Another recent Fantasy Alarm guest. But yeah, feel free to throw questions in as we go along. I'm going to pull up Rex Timotheus in the chat. What's happening? I'm going to pull up some ADP. I don't know if you know Theo, but I know that I used to be a real estate guy, finance guy. Now I do this full time. Also, my graphics ability, as you'll see, incredible. I mean, look at how nice this looks.
Whew.
Just, I mean, sharp,
That
right?
that that thing is hang it in the Louvre.
Just really, you know what? It's no nonsense. It gets to the point. It lets you
Yeah.
know here's, the first group of players. There's the promo code on the bottom, right? It's the same. It's the FFPC colors. I know that because I use the little ink blotter thing to pull the color over. What more do you everyone wants all these bells and whistles, dude? Here, it's just boom, straightforward, right?
Yeah, and I noticed that little promo code Coop. I mean, not too bad. They got a $35 contest. Coop is basically giving you an entry to that contest for $10 with the promo code
That's
Coop.
that's
I
so
mean,
insane, dude. The little math, you deposit 45 bucks, get 25, that's two entries. I mean, come
yeah,
on now. Come
absolutely,
on now.
absolutely love that.
It's free real estate, dude. It's like, people are paying all this money for just a picture of like the color black on a canvas. I mean, I'm giving you blue, I'm giving you red. It's a lot going on. What we're doing for ADP is because unlike wide receiver and running back, with wide receiver and running back, you can go round by round, and there's wide receivers drafted in every single round. First round has 8 wide receivers being drafted, right? So what we're doing is we're grouping guys together by where they go here, right? So group 1 here on FFPC, Josh Allen goes in the 3rd round, and oddly Jalen Hurts goes at pick 41. I did notice Josh Allen hasn't been picked higher than pick 25 in any of these drafts. So never gone in the 1st or 2nd round. And this is single QB format, but because it's best ball, you need at least 2 or 3. Jalen Hurts, even though he's a second quarterback, some people are picking him as high as 18th overall. He's going the 2nd round sometimes. So I don't know. How do you feel about? Is this about right for the QBs to start us off?
Well, I'll say, not to get too galaxy brain, but FFPC at a best ball tournament like this on FFPC, you're going to find the people stacking, and I think the reason you're seeing people reaching on Jalen Hurts is they want to ensure that they get that AJ Brown, Jalen Hurts stack, and people don't mind being a little different in a field this large. So they potentially reach a couple spots on AJ Brown and then reach a number of spots to get Jalen Hurts. You're always going to see people sort of doing that in the FFPC streets. I think the disparity makes sense. I do think that the Kellen Moore hire increases the ceiling of Jalen Hurts from a passing game perspective, but I think there's a chance that he has a lower floor when it comes to what we've expected from him running the football. He's still going to be efficient, but is he going to be like a sort of break fantasy numbers with Saquon Barkley there and now the Kellen Moore offense? So I
right?
think Jalen Hurts is fine at QB2, but I would rather, if I'm going to pay a premium in this tournament setting, I'd rather go with the player that's could have been QB1 overall for, I mean, the guy's on an unbelievable tear
Yeah,
at the position in Josh Allen. I know that there's concerns about Josh Allen's weapons. They had a ton of vacated targets, but at the end of the day, Josh Allen's going to figure out a way to put up fantasy points on the board. We saw this with Mahomes when he lost Tyreek Hill and he became a little bit more of a value. He ends up being quarterback 1 overall in that season.
right.
Josh Allen's still a bet.
He figures it out. That's the thing. I mean, I do worry a little bit, like, because you have a guy in Stephon Diggs leads the team in first downs 4 years in a row. Someone's got to step up, but I think that Dalton Kincaid, Curtis Samuel, these guys, they can make it happen.
Yeah.
And the reason these two guys go so far above everybody else is pretty simple. I mean, 15 rushing touchdowns. Are they going to each have 15 again? I don't know, but they're still going to, it's going to continue to work, right? Like they're still going to have 10 probably, you know what I mean? And even if it's 8, that's enough to win you a bunch of weeks. So, yeah, I have no problem with either one of these guys here. I don't find myself taking them a ton though. Just because I'm still busy drafting guys. I think he'd be the number 1 overall flex player in those spots. This next group here, uh, gets into the 5th round, right? And pick 48 is right there at the swing. Lamar Jackson, that's exactly on the swing. So you got to give him credit for that. But these guys all go pretty close together on FFPC. Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Anthony Richardson, CJ Stroud, all in the 5th round for those people listening at home. So that's your top 6 QBs. Uh, Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts going earlier than Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Anthony Richardson, CJ Stroud. Do you find yourself gravitating towards anybody in particular here?
Give me all of the Anthony Richardson this year in fantasy in any format. I think Anthony Richardson goes absolutely nuclear, and I think where he's getting valued is fine. Again, all these guys, it's sort of like a trigger. As soon as QB3 goes off the board, it's like bang, bang, bang. So I think there is an argument that this is a round you want to be targeting quarterback, where you are able to load up in rounds 1 through 4 with either an elite tight end in the tight end premium format, as well as running backs and wide receivers in that range are strong. And you're able to like kind of pass on Allen and Hurts and still get QB1 overall upside from this group. But at the end of the day, I just think that Richardson is a really, really fun bet to make this year. I also feel less forced to stack with Anthony Richardson. You can go with a sort of a late stack with like a Josh Downs with him. Whereas Lamar Jackson, you sort of want to have that correlation with Andrews or Flowers. Mahomes, you certainly are going to stack. Whereas Richardson gives you the ability to kind of go naked with your QB1 if you're stacking in a big best ball format. But there's something about Anthony Richardson this year where I think it's all going to come together, and I think he's going to absolutely smash and just crush it this year.
Yeah, there's something about him is the fact that he played 3 games last year essentially and had 3 rushing touchdowns, right? Like that's how you get Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts. 17 games, they scored 15 rushing touchdowns. This guy scored a rushing touchdown essentially per game he played last year, and he's obviously capable of scoring a ton of them. And that creates not only a high ceiling, but a high floor too,
Oh yeah.
right? Like you talk about these formats where it's 4-point passing like this one, and you know 60 rushing yards of the touchdown is already 12 points, which is, for everybody else, like the Jared Goffs of the world, they need to throw for like 200 and something yards just to get to that spot. So yeah, I'm feeling good about this range. And honestly, Patrick Mahomes, if you're playing in a big tournament, I know you want like crazy upside and all these things. Patrick Mahomes is capable of throwing 50 touchdowns in any given year. And if you're playing in like a contained 12-team league, just the fact that you can get this guy as the quarterback 4, a guy that has been in the league 6 years and he's been a QB1 in fantasy every single year. And if you take every player all time in fantasy football and sort them by points per game, he's the number 1 best player, right? Like Patrick Mahomes, you can never walk away from a draft being like, oh man, kind of stinks that I ended up with Patrick Mahomes. You know?
No, not at all. I mean, certainly Mahomes is always a good answer. And like we've seen Kansas City last year, Coop. We start out the year, they lose to Detroit, and it's Justin Watson and MVS as wide receiver. And now game one against Baltimore this year is going to be Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy. So they've definitely gone out and added speed and improved those positions. So we'll see what that does for Mahomes. But I think Mahomes is set to have a very strong year. Obviously, I just think that it's when I'm looking at the incredible rushing upside for Richardson, and it's sort of a big tournament setting like this. I love the idea of Richardson just going nuts in the fantasy playoffs and
Yeah.
putting up like 3 smash weeks in a row.
Right. And I'm cool. That's the thing with this the first 6 guys for me, because I like them all, I'm kind of cool with just waiting and seeing if I can get somebody out of value. That's
Yeah.
kind of how I do it. I'll take them at ADP, pretty much all these guys. But if I can get them, like say Anthony Richardson on average going pick 54 in the 5th round, if those guys are there in the 6th round, bada boom. Right. So that's kind of the way I've been playing it. In this next group is where you kind of need to start picking and choosing guys you like and don't like, in my opinion, because now we're getting into round. And again, these groups are there's a pretty clear jump. So in this first one, you have round 3 and 4. This group is all round 5. This next group, no quarterback on average is going in round 6. And then in round 7, you have Joe Burrow at pick 74, Kyler Murray right after him, pick 76, Dak Prescott, pick 83 at the back end of the 7th, and then at the very beginning of the 8th, Jordan Love right behind him at pick 85. So if you're picking from this group, is there anybody that you're willing to go above ADP, or are you still in the mode of like, I'll just take the value if it's there?
I think it's a non-reach group. The only reason I would reach is if I'm trying to build correlation. Like if I drafted Marvin Harrison Jr. or Jamar Chase, I would potentially push Kyler or Joe Burrow up. Dak doesn't have any sort of steam right now. I don't think there's really a need to push him up. I think if you draft CeeDee Lamb, just draft Dak at cost because I think it's less like a little bit less enthusiasm league to league. Dak's pretty stagnant. He goes at ADP. Jordan Love, though, I find myself wanting some Jordan Love this year. I think that last year really was a really big positive sign for him. We talked about it last year, Coop. Continually, you would bring up that they were the least paid wide receiver group, and
Right.
also they were clearly the most inexperienced wide receiver group that we've ever seen. And Jordan Love was still able to have that sort of success with rookie tight ends, a completely green wide receiver room, and then also missing Aaron Jones for large portions of the year. And Jordan Love just kept figuring it out. I think that Green Bay offense takes a big step forward this year, and he's the cheapest of the 4.
Yeah,
So
they were missing guys across. I mean, it wasn't just Aaron Jones, like
yeah, Christian Watson
Christian
for a
Watson
big
missed a
portion
ton.
of the year.
Luke Musgrave missed a massive chunk of the season. Dontavian Wicks missed time. Romeo Dubs was coughing up blood in that game. Jayden Reed missed a game. Like these guys, they were banged up and they just kept rocking. And I'll
Yeah,
tell you, the Jordan Love ADP actually is the reason that I don't reach on CJ Stroud, because I look at CJ Stroud as a guy that has multiple great weapons, and we're not really sure, who to really draft. Like I don't really like drafting Dalton Schultz. And with the 3 wide receivers, we have a decent idea, but they could mix and match. It's the same thing with the Packers. I don't really like trying to pick and choose which of those players. I just like the value of the quarterback, and they have so many weapons that you can even have one of them get hurt, just like with CJ Stroud. And Jordan Love was kind of every bit as good as CJ Stroud statistically last year. I mean, if you look at the numbers, he's right there, right?
yeah, and you can also just double tap 2 of the 3 Christian Watson, Dontavian Wicks, Romeo Dubs. You
Right.
can get two of the 3 of those guys, and that's enough correlation with Love. I think that the tight end position could be a little bit annoying this year.
I'm
I
staying
think
away. I'm
I think
staying away.
it's a tough one to
Yeah.
bet on. I think that they actually are pretty bullish on both of those guys, so it could be kind of them kind of crossing each other off in terms of the who really runs away with the production. Whereas the wide receivers, I do think it's going to be a little bit more like Jayden Reed. We talked about this last year. We expect his snaps to increase. He's probably the best bet. But those other 3 guys, I think that at least 2 of them are going to be right around wide receiver 3 range, if not better. We've certainly seen spike week potential with the Watson Wicks combination. If you want to kind of roll with it and kind of go for the upside play, and then Romeo Dubs obviously had that incredible playoff game last year, and is shown as a guy that Jordan Love likes. So
I
again,
like Dubs. People dog Dubs, man. I like
yeah,
Dubs. Like he was the best. He was the best wide receiver through the playoffs last year, and it wasn't even close for this team, right? Like
yeah,
in every game, he was the number one wide receiver in every game they played. And in this format, touchdown dependent guys. That's what people say. Romeo Dubs. Oh, all he does is score touchdowns. It's like this is the perfect format for those guys because you get the touchdowns and you don't have to worry about the rest. So, yeah, I like Dubs, man. I like going. I like honestly that's the thing is you get Jordan Love and then you just pick whoever's kind of floating around there,
oh for
With
sure,
one guy that I really like from this group that causes me to almost never take Joe Burrow, and again, Dak Prescott. If they had just taken one rookie wide receiver from this deep class, it would be so much easier to get excited, wouldn't it? To be like, if Brandon Cooks was the field stretcher as a part-time wide receiver, and they went out and they grabbed somebody in like the second or third round, and it was CeeDee Lamb and let's say, I mean, Lad McConkey or somebody. I mean, anybody. CeeDee Lamb, Lad McConkey in the slot, and then Brandon Cooks as the field stretcher and Jake Ferguson. Man, we'd be fired up for Dak because he was QB3 last year, but
yeah.
they did nothing, man. So it's like it's hard to get excited. Kyler Murray for me is a guy I'm super excited about because this guy, he was the top. He again talk about sorting quarterbacks by all time. He's fourth all time in fantasy points per game. He comes back last year in the games that he played last year. The the Cardinals were scoring 22 points per game, which was more than the Chiefs and the Jaguars on the season, and just slightly less than the Texans. Like they were putting up points in these games, right? And they get Marvin Harrison Jr. in the house, Trey McBride. We like. I mean, Kyler Murray. I just feel like if you like Anthony Richardson, what's not to like about Kyler Murray?
Yeah, I agree with you. And Kyler definitely is a guy where structurally it makes sense too because we love the skill position weapons. I certainly love Marvin Harrison Jr. and Trey McBride. You're the tight end whisperer. You gotta have a little McBride and best ball stacks. So yeah, Kyler. I think the really promising thing was we were told throughout the process that look for Kyler Murray to take a step back as a runner because of the injury. We didn't see that at all. He came back and looked exactly the same. He's back there making plays. And I actually like the Zay Jones pickup as well. Like with Zay Jones and Michael Wilson, he has two deep threats. Those guys help McBride. Those guys, certainly help Marvin Harrison Jr. And then the Trey Benson selection. It's sort of an opposite extreme of what Dallas did for Dak. Dallas was so forced to pick offensive linemen. I get it. But it's like
Puff Pass Kick in the chat is saying that we're missing out on the Ryan Flournoy fever though.
there's a Ryan Flournoy hive out there. You
The
know, he could be
Flournoy boys,
Michael Gallup
boys are
2.0, man.
demanding respect.
Yeah,
For
Southeast Missouri State in the house.
yeah, I'm still saying who's that speedy kick returner they have there that every once in a while gets a look. Cavante Turpin. Let's get some more Turpin out there.
Don't go chasing waterfalls, Coop.
A little turpentine out there,
A little
baby.
turpentine. There you go. You're gonna be like the one dude tweeting that all year.
It's turpentine, baby. Let's go. There's a lot of ways to go with that one. I think I might have sold myself on nicknames alone, which I mean, that's half the battle out here.
Half the battle is right.
Let's get in the next group. This squad here is where we get into the rookies. So round 9, and again, you see the jump here: round seven, early round 8 for Jordan Love, and then nobody else the rest of round 8, and you get to pick 102. So to put that in perspective for those listening at home, Dak Prescott goes pick 83, Jordan Love pick 85. Then you have a big jump all the way to pick 102, where you get Caleb Williams. But then it goes Brock Purdy 104, Jayden Daniels 106. And we see this all the time, Theo, where everybody in their mind has a guy. And then when someone takes the other guy, you say, phew, they didn't take my guy. I'm going to take him right now. So it's like if you're a Caleb Williams guy and someone takes Purdy, you go, I got him. I got Caleb Williams. Or Jayden Daniels, right? Because Jayden Daniels has the mobility. So that's why you see these like clusters like this. It happens all the time. For you, do you have one guy from this group, or are we still in the land of just take the value if it's there?
I mean, I found myself drafting both of the rookies,
Yeah.
and I think that they're both really, really promising for fantasy. Jayden Daniels sort of gives you a little bit of a arbitrage play on Anthony Richardson, where Jayden Daniels could give you that immense rushing upside.
Mhm.
And I think Caleb Williams is just really, really good and has really, really good weapons. Where Caleb Williams it's an easy player to stack because we have 3 pass catchers, even potentially a DeAndre Swift pick you could stack with Caleb Williams. Cole Kmet is falling to very, very low prices. So Caleb's a structural player, whereas Jayden Daniels in these best ball formats, this is a guy where you can draft sort of naked Daniels. You could draft Ben Sinnott later on. But Daniels, I just think the fantasy upside for Daniels is massive. And to get him as a QB2, there's, you could also punt and make one of these guys, your focal point and go with a 3 QB build, Coop, and kind of feel okay about things. But for me, I gravitate to the rookies, and I know that sounds sort of like you're not, looking at Brock Purdy, who we've already see have success, but for whatever reason, I keep looking at the 2 rookies in this range, and they have been like kind of easy clicks for me in best ball this offseason.
Yeah, dude. You know what sucks is I've been making a lot of those easy clicks with my mobile QB builds, and I was so excited. I have 2 teams already with Lamar Jack. I got Lamar Jackson, and then I spent up on Jayden Daniels, and I took Anthony Richardson and spent up on Jayden Daniels, and I was fired up. I was like, man, the upside's unlimited here. They both ended up with bye week 14. So, and they also both ended up with, if you look at strength of schedule, boy, are those schedules pretty rough, right? Like the
Yeah.
Ravens and Washington, not tremendous schedules. And also, I mean, honestly, also the Colts is okay, but like, those are tough schedules. We're talking like bottom 5 schedules for those guys. So kind of got a little rug pulled on that one. If you do go that, keep that in mind. Lamar Jackson, CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, Jayden Daniels, Drake May, and Bo Nix all have the same bye week 14. So if you take those 2 quarterbacks, you've got to circle around and grab somebody from our very last tier. And we'll talk about today who we like from that group. But
Yeah, it's
kinda rough.
funny. Like for FFPC, we've actually seen worse years, though. I would say for like the quarterback position aside, we've had more like kind of nightmare scenarios with week 14.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, it's just the nature of the beast. But yeah, you've definitely got to build your structure. You're definitely forced to like. There's no 2 QB builds with those guys because of the timing of their bye week. It's got to be a three QB or more build.
Yeah. Yeah. It just hurts because it's like you can't go back and draft a third QB in those ones. Hey,
No,
but
you're stuck with a couple of tickets. But
yeah.
hey, you could have such a monster. You could have such a monster, that
Could be it could pan out for me. So
yeah.
we'll see. I mean, like that's the thing. Luckily, all these sites adjusted. I checked FFPC. They don't have week 14 is not part of the bye week. It's part of the playoffs. It's 15, 16, 17. So there's no bye weeks that fall during fantasy playoffs. Scamp, what's up in the chat, my man? Real quick question from Puff Pass Kick before we move on. He wants to ask, does Jackson Smith and Jigba need Tyler Lockett to retire and sell houses? Or DK Metcalf to retire and become a rapper in order to break out in year 2? I say
I
kinda. But what do you think?
I think a little bit, but I do think that stylistically, with Ryan Grubb taking over, we're going to see a different Seattle offense. I think Grubb is going to have them passing a lot more and playing at a much faster pace. And we saw Tyler Lockett play at a pretty consistently high level for the last few years, but he is getting older. We also saw JSN last year, Coop, miss a bunch of time in the preseason. He's going to have a healthy offseason. And I think that there's a chance that the takeover happens. Certainly, we would have liked to see Tyler Lockett move on, but I'm not burying JSN.
Yeah.
Not burying him.
We've been calling it the flippening, Theo. So last year, for those listening, there was a flippening that we were looking for to start the season in 2 wide receiver sets for the Vikings. It was Justin Jefferson and KJ Osborne. And the rookie Jordan Addison was the guy coming out for 3 wide receiver sets. When Justin Jefferson got hurt, it was Osborne and Addison in full sets. And then when JJ came back, the flippening happened. And KJ Osborne was the odd man out. Jordan Addison stayed on the field. That will happen at some point, as Theo alludes to, with Tyler Lockett, hopefully. And, Tyler Lockett at this stage, he just got an extension. I think he personally would probably not be offended by being the third guy that comes in, right? Like JSN, it's DK Metcalf every snap, and then it's JSN in the slot for 3 wide receiver sets. And then for 2 wide receiver sets, JSN moves outside and Lockett gets a breather. I don't think Lockett would be opposed to that. I mean, I've watched Lockett for however many years now. That dude avoids contact like nobody else. It's incredible how nobody calls him out for it either. Like if there's anyone around him, he just falls on the ground. Have you noticed that, Theo?
He's
He
cagey.
he
He's
never
cagey.
gets hit. He never gets hit. He's Edelman would do that a little bit, but I'll send you a compilation highlight of Tyler Lockett going down sometimes before the first down mark. I mean, it's smart. It keeps he's a smart player, but I'm just saying there's definitely been frustrating moments for him. So maybe he'd
Clip it
be
up for
okay
me.
with.
Clip it up for me, Coop. I
I
want to watch
will.
that one.
I
Clip
will.
it
I
up.
might
Get in
even
the
have
lab.
to. I'm gonna Google it because honestly, somebody must have already clipped it because I was and pulling my hair out watching this guy sometime. But anyway, let's get on to the next group here. Group 5. And again, we're going to do our best to help you guys out with bye weeks and stuff. It's really fresh information, but we've gone combed through a good amount of it. So here, once again, we see it again, Theo. The tier breaks where it's like pick 106. This one not as bad, but again, a full round later from 106 to pick 114, with 114 with Goff, Trevor Lawrence pick 115, Tua 120, Justin Herbert 126, Kirk Cousins 127. So here, a pretty thick cluster of options. And again, they've all got their warts, but if you're going in on one of these guys, it's going to be
Jared Goff. I think this is Jared Goff's year. The Ben Johnson offense has been 5th in the NFL for back-to-back years in points per game. This year, I think they could make a big leap forward. I think they could be the highest scoring offense in the NFL. Like we talked a lot about Jordan Love last year, how he had so many inexperienced players around him, but not enough kind of credit goes to Detroit, where Jahmyr Gibbs was a rookie, Sam Laporta was a rookie, and Jamison Williams was incredibly inexperienced. Now they got a lot of usable weeks out of guys like Josh Reynolds, but at the end of the day, the core of the offense was all young players and Amon-Ra St. Brown, and obviously David Montgomery was really strong to start the year. But Gibbs and Laporta and Jamison, I think, are going to take steps forward. The elite weapons, the offense being in its groove. Jared Goff has gotten better every year in Detroit in his fantasy points per game. Last year, he was quarterback 11 in points per game. And I just feel so bullish about this offense, this offensive line, this system. And Jared Goff just got the bag. This guy's going to be playing loose. The situation reminds me a little bit of Dak last year, where Dak was going in this kind of range of the draft, that quarterback 15-ish range. And Dak was just sort of an easy click last year. Dak ends up finishing as QB4. Jared Goff, I think, could be a top 5 quarterback this year out of this range of the draft. Whereas Lawrence, I'm a little less bullish on. Tua, certainly Tua, if you get Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, you want that correlation as your QB2, that's fine. Herbert, I have major concerns about the passing volume, and I think that the offensive philosophy and also just the weapons Coop are really, really underwhelming. And Cousins coming off a major injury. I think there's going to be a lot of people chasing Cousins here as the 5th. But for me, give me Jared Goff, give me the Lions offense. And I can even do a little bit of backdoor stacking with like Jamison Williams and not even go with a Laporta, a Gibbs, or an Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think Jared Goff's going to put up numbers this year.
Yeah, and with this, I mean that's getting loose for these younger guys. I think is a great term to use because you got to remember these guys coming in as a rookie. It's so hard to develop like the tricks of the trade, like the little extra things that you got to do, and it's also hard to have the confidence to to do some bold stuff. Like the first day you go to the local YMCA, you're not busting out the spin move and the through the legs. You're just kind of setting picks and doing you know what I mean? Like doing your job. These guys now know they can be stars in this league. And I think you're going to see them do some special stuff, a lot more special stuff from Jahmyr Gibbs and Jameson Williams. And I think you're going to see Sam Laporta actually break some tackles because that was the best thing he was doing in college. And last year he didn't really do it, which is it's amazing he was so good without like his best trick, right? It was like Rashi Rice last year was good, but he didn't really have a lot of contested catches when that's his like best thing. So we're going to see a lot of that develop. One thing I want to warn people on with this group here is that the schedule actually becomes very important. Early in the show, Rex Timotheus asked thoughts about having multiple top 15 QBs. I like the idea. If you can get them at a good price, you just have to be very careful at situations that are going to cause you to have to draft multiple guys, right? And I'll tell you what, if the big problem with a few guys in this group here is that if you draft Patrick Mahomes or Jalen Hurts specifically, you have to be very careful with drafting Jared Goff and Tua. First off, Jared Goff has the same bye week as Jalen Hurts, and Tua has the same bye week as Mahomes. The other thing is that while Mahomes and Tua are on bye, the Eagles play the Browns and the Lions play the Cowboys. So that's already bad matchups across the board. And when you look at these teams, the teams they all play during fantasy playoffs are rough. The Chiefs play the Browns, Texans, Steelers. The I can actually just pull it up and kind of show people. I made a little grid for an article.
That Steelers game,
Yeah.
such a rough one on the
Right.
road in Pittsburgh. That's rough.
Yeah, I recently did a yeah, if you can see that all right here, it's like these are brutal matchups, dude. And like so like if you draft Tua and Mahomes, they have the same bye week. And then you got Cleveland, Houston, Pittsburgh, Houston, San Francisco, Cleveland. There's not a good matchup in there at all. For you know what I mean? You have for 6 straight weeks of bad matchups. Same thing goes for if you're going to draft Hurts and Stafford. Like brutal matchups in here, man. The Rams, terrible. The Tua's season ends. Those games, the Houston, San Francisco, Cleveland games, those are sandwiched in between two games against the Jets. So he gets the Jets week 14 and the last week of the season. Like Tua could have a very, very rough end to this year. The Jets scare me, especially for passing the football. So just
Yeah.
be very careful with how you're doing the matchups. Bye weeks typically we ignore bye weeks to some degree, but with a few of these, the matchups are just absolutely ridiculously not good. So be very careful with that. Before we move on, I just want to ask Justin Herbert. I mean, again, we've kind of said with super elite quarterbacks. Again, we're talking super elite. Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, Peyton Manning. We sit there and say, I don't care who who's catching the ball. You could give a shopping cart a good shove, and it could catch a touchdown pass from Peyton Manning. The question we got to ask ourselves is Justin Herbert that guy? Can he overcome a team that wants to be run heavy? Can he overcome having Josh Palmer as his best wide receiver?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's also sort of a huge cultural shift in philosophy where he's always had that, safety blanket in Austin Eckler out of the backfield, and now you don't see that from the running back position. Like
Right.
Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins. J.K. Dobbins, if healthy, potentially could be a pass catcher out of the backfield, but I think we're still kind of hoping and wishing when it comes to Dobbins, kind of fulfilling the fantasy potential. Really been snake bitten with all these injuries throughout his career. And then you nailed it. It's the lack of wide receivers, a lot of question marks there. We like Lad McConkey. Josh Palmer's in a great spot, Coop, but it's still Josh Palmer. And the tight end position, they go out and, this was something where there was a lot of thought during the process of the draft that we've seen Harbaugh and Roman have success with the tight end position. This could be Brock Bowers. They could take Brock Bowers early on, give Herbert a number one target that way, or maybe sign somebody in free agency, maybe make a trade. Instead, they go and get Will Dissly and Hayden Hurst. So
Gross.
there's a complete lack of everything there. Now he's got a really good offensive line.
The door's
And
wide open for Stone Smart. I'm just saying, bro.
listen, any chance you get to talk about your boy Stone Smart,
I'm
hat tip
just
to you,
saying.
Coop. Hat
They
tip,
could have
Coop.
they could have drafted Brock Bowers. They could have. I mean, there wasn't really any.
Why
good,
would I draft Brock Bowers when I have Stone Smart on my
That's what
roster?
I'm.
That's the
That's
question.
what
That's
I'm
the
talking
question.
about, dude.
That's
That's
the
what I'm saying.
question. So
Yeah.
it's definitely it's a rubber meets the road type scenario. It's the elite player with the lack of weapons. Does Justin Herbert just go ham? Could he be super efficient this year? A little more threat of the running game, and Herbert just is elite and makes things happen. I don't know. It's a tough bet to
Yeah.
make. It's just a lack of everything there. There's nothing there besides
I'll
the
give
talent of
you.
the player that you're that
I'll
excited
give
about.
you a little something. I'll give you a little something. A little earworm that you'll
Let me
want to
know.
think
Let me
about.
know.
And you know what? There's a website. If I go onto the interwebs, right, type in www dot, and I go to this little page. It's called Player Profiler. Have
Oh
you
yeah,
heard of that? You
I
heard of
heard
that?
of it. I heard
So
of
you
it.
go over to Player Profiler and you type in blah 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 Justin Herbert, right? And the cool thing they have over there is workout metrics, and then they show you how this guy stacks up compared to other players, right? When you look at something like burst score for a guy like Justin Herbert, what percentile do you think that guy is?
Not well. It's a little better than you would think. We actually saw the rushing production as a rookie with Herbert, where it's sort of gone down ever since.
Right.
It was sort of like an out of necessity thing, whether it was him stepping into a Tyrod Taylor designed offense or whatever reason. As a rookie, they used him as a runner, and then they sort of got away from it.
As you might be surprised to find that it's actually 91st percentile burst score. And his
That
40 time for quarterbacks is 81st percentile. So I look at a guy like this and I ask myself, if I'm Greg Roman and I'm going through my bag of tricks that have mostly been used for Lamar Jackson, you can't call all those plays. But there's a handful of plays around the goal line that I've watched that team execute where I say to myself, I could have run that in. I could have run that in on the play action, on the RPO. And Justin Herbert, 6'6, 240 pounds with decent mobility. I wouldn't be surprised if this guy comes out and, has a rushing touchdown every other week. And all of a sudden we're looking at it and we're saying, Greg Roman does have this bag of tricks. He had it when he was calling plays for Colin Kaepernick. He had it when he was calling plays for Lamar Jackson. He had it when he was calling plays for Tyrod Taylor and the gang in Buffalo. So I wouldn't be shocked if Justin Herbert has a career year running the football and potentially scoring rushing touchdowns. So just throw that in the back of your mind.
I'm keeping it. I'm keeping my mind open to Justin Herbert saving the weapons with like an absurd number of rushing touchdowns. I mean that I think you gave a nice bull scenario there. I don't know. It's
not ideal.
Greg Roman leaves a lot to be desired with Herbert.
Exactly. And for Lamar Jackson to, be QB1 and be MVP, he didn't have to throw 40 touchdowns, but he did have to score double-digit rushing touchdowns, right? It's like you need that Cam Newton combo. You got to throw for 30, run for 10 in this type of offense because you're not going to throw for 40. So, and again, we're about to find out. We're about to find out if Justin Herbert is elite or not. That's the bottom line, right? Like we'll find out if this guy's a superstar or not because superstars will figure it out and other guys will just be mediocre when they don't have the weapons. Let's move on to this next tier here because again, I'm not really seeing a lot of guys. I've yet to come across a guy where I say I'm not drafting that guy. Have you? Is there anybody here where you just say I'm just not, even if he falls? Because I was doing the tight end rankings last show, and there were a few guys where I said I don't care if this guy falls to the very last round, I'm not going to take him. I haven't come across anybody like that. Have you so far?
No, from this group, the group 5 of quarterbacks. I mean, I think when they fall to a particular range, and certainly when you get to best ball drafting, like best ball structure matters, where getting into that quarterback range, deciding how many quarterbacks you're building with. I think that this range is fine, Coop. I don't think there's a clear like gross. I don't want any of.
So to recap for the audio listeners, we had the top 6 were Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Anthony Richardson, CJ Stroud. The back end QB1s were Joe Burrow, Kyler Murray, Dak Prescott, Jordan Love, Caleb Williams, Brock Purdy. The QB2 range, early QB2 range, Jayden Daniels. Jayden Daniels, QB2. That has a nice sound to it, doesn't it, Theo?
Sounds awesome.
That sounds great. Jayden Daniels, Jared Goff, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Herbert, Kirk Cousins. Those are your front end QB2s. The back end QB2s, and we have to separate group 6 and 7 here because there's a crazy ADP drop off from the first 4 of these guys to the next group. So the next group here after Kirk Cousins goes pick 127. You got Matthew Stafford at pick 139 in round 12. Baker Mayfield, round 12, pick 144. Aaron Rodgers also averaging out at 144. So pretty much the same pick as Baker. And then Deshaun Watson, pick 147. So QB's deep, man. QB's deep. If you're going to pick somebody of this crew, and I guess I should put it on the screen for those watching, who you feeling out of these guys?
Stafford makes a lot of sense, and Stafford actually played very well last year, especially towards the end of the season and the playoffs. I don't mind Baker though. This year.
I know.
Baker's one where
that's the one where I never feel excited about the pick, but I know it's a good pick.
So Baker, they had the least amount of vacated targets. He's got everybody back from the whole receiver core. He's got Rachaad White back. They lost Dave Canales, which is certainly a bright guy who got a head coaching job. So, but you would like to think that the Dave Canales, successor is not going to completely try to change things up. But I think that Tampa Bay in the draft, they draft Jalen McMillan, they draft Bucky Irving. So they had two pretty decent pass catchers there. Trey Palmer's a year
Wow,
older.
dude, Devin Culp erasure here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There you go. There you go. There you go.
I'm just
Coop, you got to talk about the super fast
talking about
tight end.
some deep, weird 7th round tight end.
Yeah, you have to. You have
Sneak
to.
him in there. Dude. It's honestly, I'm contractually obligated.
There was just good vibes with Baker last year.
Yeah,
He's an easy player to stack, and he's still pretty cheap. Stafford, I think, is the pick of these four if I had to pick who has the best fantasy season. But Baker, I've drafted him a lot on Underdog. I'm certainly not scared of having him on FFPC. They also gave Baker a nice amount of rushing attempts. I think that there's an opportunity for him to improve with his rushing stats. And it's sort of just a nice storyline for Baker. 28 years old,
right.
Sort of a career-changing bounce-back narrative. Stafford, though, Stafford's the guy for me out of this range where if I had to pick one, I'm probably flag planning on him. What's interesting is Deshaun Watson. It's a Ken Dorsey takes over. Cleveland is going to change it up. They're going to do a lot more RPOs, take a lot more shots downfield is sort of the plan. Yeah. I think that they want to be more aggressive. Do we see fantasy success from Watson? I don't know. We've been waiting a long time for this.
I think so.
I don't know. It's Ken Dorsey's interesting though.
I'm in on Deshaun Watson. I don't care. Again, it's like, you have to, and I wrote an article on perception on Kyler Murray, and perception is 100% holding back Deshaun Watson, and we'll take advantage of that any chance we can. Whenever there's negative stigma that causes people to be off these guys, I'm in. This guy, again, we're talking about a guy who is a top 5 all-time points per game quarterback. I've seen this guy be great on terrible teams with terrible coordinators and terrible weapons. And this guy on teams that won 4 games, he's going out and throwing 30 touchdown passes and like less than 10 picks. Like, this guy can play football. It's in there somewhere. And I think with Amari Cooper and Jerry Jeudy and David Njoku and that crew, this guy can be great. And it's possible for him to have a top 5 season. Like, that's the thing is I look at this list and it's like, it's possible for Aaron Rodgers and Matt Stafford to win the MVP. I've seen Matt Stafford have an MVP caliber season one year in 2011 where Aaron Rodgers just had a ridiculous season where he threw like 2 interceptions or something stupid like that. But Matthew Stafford has had MVP caliber seasons. Baker Mayfield to me is a guy I only pick if I have certain conditions already. If my only quarterback I have is Anthony Richardson or Jayden Daniels, and I'm terrified, and I already plan to do 3 quarterback builds, then maybe I'll go Baker Mayfield to give myself a little bit of a floor, right? Or if I already have Mike Evans or Chris Godwin, then I'll can sell myself on some Baker. I have a heart, like, he's just so safe. The range of outcomes for some of these guys is so high, and the range of outcomes for Baker is right here in the middle. I know he's going to be good, and I know he's not going to be bad, but I don't think he's going to be great, and I don't think he's going to be terrible.
No ceiling, right?
There's no ceiling, but the floor is the ceiling. You're just getting you're getting him. Same with Goff, like, you're getting him. Goff is a little better version, but you're just getting him, right? The lack of mobility, I think, is the big problem for guys like Kirk Cousins and Goff and Baker, where they go out and they throw the ball. Like, Kirk Cousins routinely has better passing stats than Josh Allen, like, all the time. But the fact that the dude wouldn't dare run the ball, he had like a couple QB sneak touchdowns when David Montgomery was hurt. Jared Goff did, but that's just not part of the game. Whereas a guy like Deshaun Watson, he can do anything. He can do anything, and if everything comes together just right, he could be an absolute league winner. Whereas, like, I don't know what Baker would have to do for me to be like, yeah, dude, Baker Mayfield won the league for me.
Yeah, I guess that's a fair point. I do think that that Baker, again, he's got a little bit of upside in the sense that he's where he's being drafted versus where he could finish in the
Right.
QB ranges. But is that an impactful tier that they could break through? I mean, I see the argument with Watson. I do think that we've seen some red flags that maybe he's not going to return to the sort of elite scoring numbers. But they're certainly giving him a chance with this system. they're continually trying to add players. They go get Jerry Jeudy, got
Yeah.
Elijah Moore last year. We'll see. We'll see what happens with Watson. I'd like to think that they keep leaning into David Njoku, which was something we saw them philosophically do last year in the second half of the year, certainly with Joe Flacco. I think that would take a lot of pressure off of everybody in this offense. But we'll see if they keep that sort of philosophy.
I'm worried about that with Alex Van Pelt out, because Van Pelt called 20 tight end screens for David Njoku, which was second only to Evan Ingram. And I worry that with Van Pelt gone and and the new regime in, it could be a little ugly. I will say
David Njoku was cooking though. At the end of the day, it's like that's he was unbelievable at times for us in the second half of the season last year. So we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. And again, it's like the bet there is simple for me. If you're, I know we're talking quarterbacks today, but if you want to consider David Njoku, the bet, simple for me. Amari Cooper is going to be Amari Cooper. So you got to pick one, David Njoku or Jerry Jeudy. And the people love to hate on players. And there's a lot of people that love to hate on Jerry Jeudy, like Steve Smith, for instance.
Yeah.
If that's the best way to bet again, that's the best way to leverage your opinions there. If you think a guy stinks, who is he competing with targets for? If you think Jerry Jeudy stinks, then grab David Njoku. Throw it Elijah Moore or Cedric Tillman out there late. You know what I mean? Leverage your takes. Don't just go on Twitter and be mean. That you're not making any money from that, unless you're getting a ton of engagement by being mean, which some people do. But for the most part, you got to find a way to leverage your takes. The last thing I want to say about this group is this. The reason I don't mind picking players from this group is that I wouldn't be shocked if any one of these players finished the season in fantasy playoffs for best ball week 15, 16, 17, going like 4 touchdowns, 5 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns, right? Like if you have Mike Evans and Cooper Kupp and Garrett Wilson and Amari Cooper, like that's always going to be on the table. Whereas some of these other quarterbacks that are going in the next group, I can't like in my mind picture a game log where it's like, wow, 3 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns, So that's why with this group, you're kind of getting into the last of the firepower, and you see that in the ADP. So for those listening at home, this group goes pretty tight. 139, 144, 144, 147 for Stafford, Mayfield, Rodgers, Watson. 147 being the last pick. This next group, starting with Geno Smith, pick 163. So essentially, for the entirety of round 13, people are like, nah, on quarterbacks. And you get Geno Smith pick 163, Will Levis pick 163, JJ McCarthy 172, Derek Carr 176. And then there's another big drop off. So we're into group 7 here, Theo. And now you, at this stage, you have to have an opinion, right? Like, we're out of the range of best available. You're either picking these guys or you're not. And if you are picking them, then you got to pick one.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's a really uninspiring group,
Yeah.
Coop, and it kind of speaks volumes to if you're drafting in these FFPC best balls with the kind of the known ADP here, you can kind of structure your team so you avoid this group.
Yeah.
This group it's for correlation and it's for QB3s.
Mm-hmm.
Am I crazy to think that if I'm looking at a guy that could give me a few spike weeks, though, JJ McCarthy's the one, because I think he does have a little bit of wheels to him as a opportunistic scrambler, and he does have the elite weapons where you could have him with a Justin Jefferson build. He gets TJ Hawkinson towards the end of the year, and I think he could sort of develop as the season moves along and be a little bit more fantasy friendly as we get to like the tail end of the fantasy playoffs time. But again, it's a big leap. I think a lot of people are betting on Will Levis in this range. I think there's a lot of Will Levis enthusiasm. I know some smart people on Will Levis. Will Levis could also just not be good.
He's exciting.
They've done a lot. They've done a lot for Will Levis, and I don't think any team has had more of like a cultural shift offensively. Well, obviously the Chargers, but on the opposite extreme, Tennessee goes away from the big dog, brings in Pollard to go with Spears, then signs these older wide receivers. Calvin Ridley gets a massive bag. They also bring in Tyler Boyd. They're gonna throw a lot.
That tells you they believe.
Yeah,
that tells you they believe, right? You don't sign Pollard, Hopkins, Ridley, Boyd if you don't believe in the quarterback.
Yeah, I mean they certainly do. I mean, we just didn't see it last year. there was and I know it's the style of the offense and Derrick Henry getting it, but getting a more work than he can handle. But at the end of the day, we didn't see those big spike weeks. We saw Will Levis. The first game was incredible, but then it certainly just kind of topped off. And we'll see. That you're right. I think that they do believe in him. Year two has always kind of been a big step forward for a lot of quarterbacks in fantasy, especially with one that has the kind of experience under his belt like Levis does. So Levis has a lot. I say this: there's a lot of sharp drafters on Levis in this range of this little group.
Yeah, and I tell you, like when I think of Will Levis, the Gus Johnson, David Garrard Hail Mary call just plays in my head, dude. Big, strong arm quarterback. Like when I watch Jay Cutler and I watch Will Levis, and I know that they still need to like polish up their form, and Jay Cutler never did, but just the huck it, chuck it style of football, I will always love. Just watching Romo and Big Ben and just never going down and just being a gunslinger. And Philip Rivers, just like, you know what I mean? Just that's what kind of guy Will Levis is. He's very fun to watch, but you're when it's bad, it's bad. And that's why I think in best ball, it's a lot easier to stomach than
Yeah,
in redraft, because in redraft, when a guy goes out and pulls a Jay Cutler and he throws 5 picks to the same player in one game, then you have a difficult time starting him the following week. But you don't have to make those decisions here. So I think this is the format for a guy like that. I think it's going to be tough in redraft. It's going to be tough to draft him as a QB2, which a lot of people don't even do in redraft, and then to click on him into a lineup in a single QB league, Theo, man,
yeah, it's a huge leap of faith. You'd have to
tough
have
to sleep at night. Yeah,
a massive step forward. Yeah, this is a best ball. This is a best ball group for sure. I don't see any chance that these four are guys that we're going to want to like cram into our lineups in a regular redraft
right.
format. I agree with you on that.
And I watched Derek, as Scamper says, and then there's Derek Carr. I watched Derek Carr go undrafted in a couple drafts, which I will take him with a last round pick. It's just it's hard to get excited. They didn't add any weapons
Yeah.
at all. So this next group is essentially the guys that are going with last round picks. You got Bryce Young going at 185, Drake May 191, Bo Nix 194, Daniel Jones 197, which is the first player. That's at least one player that I just will never pick. Justin Fields at pick 200, and then Russell Wilson at pick 218, going after Justin Fields. And at times, I looked at it in FFPC. It tells you where guys are going. FFPC is a longer draft, 20 plus rounds. Russell Wilson has gone undrafted at times. Someone always picks Justin Fields, but Russell Wilson's gone undrafted. So that's the first thing I want to ask you before we get to these other guys. Like, if you're picking one, are you picking Justin Fields or Russell Wilson?
In a big best ball format like this, I might go Justin Fields. But if it's a QB3 and I've waited and I've completely punted, I might go Russell Wilson here if I'm a little less sure of who I drafted. But I just think Coop at the end of the day, with a large scale best ball tournament like this, Justin Fields, if he gets me weeks, they're going to be usable weeks.
Right.
Whereas Russell Wilson, it's sort of like a purgatory play with a little less upside, especially with Arthur Smith offense here. I'm not really excited about either one of them. But Justin Fields at least gives me kind of that big time rushing upside.
To be honest, I can make the case for Russell Wilson here, which is that last year, despite being benched the last 2 games for contract reasons, because he was 7-8, middle of the
Yeah.
pack, bench for contract reasons, he was QB 14, right? And with Arthur Smith, Ryan Tannehill was QB 7 under Arthur Smith, and Matt Ryan was QB 11 in pass attempts and passing yards in his last season with the Falcons, where he was kind of a ghost. You know what I mean? So for me, the way I look at it is this: when I'm picking between Fields and Russell Wilson, how often do we see the quarterback get benched and then the backup quarterback comes in, and then it's like, oh my God, the backup quarterback's in. The day has been saved. Usually what happens is the team stinks and then they stink with the backup quarterback. It's easier for me to paint a picture where this team was a playoff team last year with Kenny Pickett, and Mike Tomlin's never been under 500. And Russell Wilson comes in and he's pretty good, right? Like Russell Wilson last year, his QB rating was like 98. He only threw 8 picks. He threw like 26 touchdowns. Like, I think there's a world where this guy comes in and he's just a starting quarterback for a playoff. It's entirely possible. I mean, he's better than Kenny Pickett, and they went to the playoffs last year. I know they had some help with injuries to Watson and Joe Burrow, but I mean, I think it's entirely possible. And I'll tell you what, Theo, this is being bold. The schedule for this team is bad. It's the second half of the season for this team is as difficult as you're ever going to see. Listen to this. Stop me when there's a game that is an easy one. Ravens, Browns, Bengals, Browns again, Eagles, Ravens again, Chiefs, Bengals again.
It's
So
brutal.
it's bad, but there is a world where picture this world, and I have $100 to win $10,000 on this world. Picture a world where Mike Tomlin's a really good coach and Russell Wilson is a really good quarterback because I've seen all of that. And picture them coming together and actually winning a bunch of games in that stretch and Russell Wilson winning the MVP.
Well,
10,000, 100 to 1, 100 to 1, $10 to win 1,000 or 100 to win 10,000. Picture a world.
or 1,000 to win 100,000.
Or you just are throwing $100 away because Russell Wilson's never going to win
Oh yeah.
MVP. But I'm just saying, you could paint crazier pictures, right? If at the end of the year, Baker Mayfield was the MVP, I wouldn't be more shocked if I woke up with my head sewn to the carpet as cousin Eddie showing up. But if Aaron Rodgers is the MVP, I'll turn around and I'll be like, you know what? Yeah, Aaron Rodgers is a good player. If Russell Wilson were the MVP, I would turn around and I'd be like, you know what? I've actually seen Russell Wilson be the MVP of this league. I've seen Russell Wilson be a Super Bowl MVP. You know what I mean? And he's not exactly like he hasn't been terrible compared to what he was in those years. So just saying, Theo, just saying. It's a crazy picture, but Picasso painted a lot of crazy pictures, and those pictures worth a lot of money.
You got to have a dream. You got to have a dream. I'll
Gotta have a
say
dream.
in this range though, the guy that gets me a little bit excited because I think he's got some rushing upside, Drake May.
Yeah, I'm
I think
excited for a
Drake
couple
May.
guys here.
Yeah.
I'm excited for a couple guys. I'm so unexcited about Daniel Jones. It makes me excited about most of these guys.
Yeah, like I think Drake May is exciting though at pick 191 because we're talking about usable weeks. It's going to be sort of a one-man gang with more rushing opportunities in New England than maybe any other landing spot for him. And I think you referenced Justin Herbert around the goal line. I think that Drake May is going to eat on the goal line, and I think he's got the potential to rush for 600 yards this year. I think he's going to run enough in New England, and I think he's got a big enough arm that he's going to put up some spike weeks. Now, whether the team is good or not, I'm not sure. I don't think so. But I think that Drake May could end up being a little bit better for fantasy than some people think.
Yeah, I mean, Jayden Daniels, has a season in college where he has 106 rushing attempts, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, gorgeous, amazing!" And Drake May has a season with 184 rushing
Yeah.
attempts, and everyone's like, "No."
Yeah.
Right? No, of course not. I mean, don't be surprised. Don't be surprised when this guy runs. And we're talking these 180 carries in college in 14 or whatever games. You know how many carries it takes to get to 85 carries in a season? Five carries a game gets you 85. And if you look at the quarterbacks that have had 85 carries, it's actually pretty hard to find anybody that didn't finish as a QB1. We're talking about like Tim Tebow and Taysom Hill and like even Geno Smith had a QB1 season. Geno Smith had a QB1 season. Yeah. Sorry, not Geno Smith. Tyrod Taylor had a QB1 season. Vince Young had a QB1 season, right? Like if you run the ball 80 times, like you got a pretty good floor, man. So I think Drake May could be good. I think Bryce Young could be good. They went out and took a page out of the Drew Brees book for short quarterbacks that can't see good, and they spent $150 million on guards, right? You go out and you get Damian Lewis and you get Robert Hunt. Like that's going to make things a little better. You get Deontay Johnson, who can actually get some separation to go with Adam Thielen. You draft Xavier Legette, who just about everybody in the world doesn't like, but maybe
he's still an athletic. Like at the end of the day, Xavier Legette, they're going out and getting one of the better athletes in the draft, a big-bodied wide receiver on the outside. They need that. And I'll say the Jonathan Brooks draft pick also got a lot of heat because I think the team had other holes to fill. But stylistically, Brooks is going to help take a lot of pressure off of Bryce Young. And I think Brooks can also, projects as a guy who can catch the ball out of the backfield. So I agree with you. Carolina's done everything they can, much like Tennessee. Carolina went out and tried to improve the situation for Bryce Young. I'm with you on that one
Right.
as well.
If this team had, and I'm saying this, if this team had Mac Hollins on the roster, then you could even make an argument that they did that Xavier Legette doesn't help the team, but they didn't have anyone that can take the top off. They had no
Yeah.
one that could take the top off. So you can hate Xavier Legette as much as you want in fantasy football, but the addition of that player means the safeties have to watch that player, right? They have to go with that player. You can't just let somebody get behind you, and they didn't have anybody that did that last year, and now they do. So the addition by subtraction, yeah. DJ Chark, smell you later, dude. Like Xavier Legette could open things up there. So yeah, and go. Better late than never, dudes. Thanks for popping in. Let's wrap it up here just by hitting on. We'll get you out of here. We're just gonna hit on the guys going undrafted, and I gotta say, let's say Theo, and I know you're usually on top of things, but let's say you fall asleep at the wheel during a draft, get some auto drafts in, and you found yourself with Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback and no QB2 at all on your roster. This is the board, and I'm going to tell you right now, you're not allowed to pick Gardner Minshew. So,
Oof.
yes. So you're not allowed to pick. I'm actually picking one pick before you. I watched you fall asleep. I just took Gardner Minshew. You got to pick one of these players, man, to do something for you. And I'll even tell you the bye week for Patrick Mahomes is week 6.
Okay, so the bet that I would make out of this group of quarterbacks, if I had to pick one, I know you want me to say Drew Lock just for your Daniel Jones fade.
I do,
You want
but
me to say Drew Lock,
you don't
and
have to. You don't have
I
to.
could say Drew Lock, and I could say Sam Howell. Those are the two that kind of stand out to me a little bit because I do think there would be a potential for both of those guys to see the field this year. They have a new coaching staff in Seattle, a new offensive coordinator. Geno Smith, they're not attached to long term.
Right.
If things don't go well in Seattle, I think Sam Howell is going to get an opportunity. On the other side of that argument, Drew Lock, the Giants went out and said that they think Drew Lock is better than any quarterback in this draft besides the big three. So they obviously are pretty bullish about Drew Lock. That was one of the reasons that they let your New England Patriots, they tried to trade up and get Drake May. New England said no there, but
Right.
when 6 overall, they could have taken JJ McCarthy. Coop, they passed on it. They took Malik Neighbors. So they obviously feel okay about the Drew Lock signing. I think he's a plus level backup. And if Jones struggles, I think he'd see the field. I'd say Lock or Sam Howell for me would be the bet. If I
Yeah.
can't say Minshew Magic.
Yeah, it's got to be Minshew. And the thing is, I was surprised to see his ADP is like not even close, dude. So like Russell Wilson goes 218, and Minshew doesn't go to like 269.
I'm
And
with you on Minshew. I think that there is a lot of people who think of that Aiden O'Connell can still win that job out in the preseason. So I think that's the problem. They're kind of canceling each other out a little bit.
it happened to Minshew last year, but the thing is, they paid Minshew a lot of money. They paid. You got to follow the money. They gave him 2 years worth of money, so I think he's going to be the starter.
Me
there,
too.
man.
Me too. I'm with you.
And I like Scamp. So I think Drew Lock is the first one that I would take, not even just because I hate Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones is coming off a very serious injury. So if I'm betting on guys to potentially start the whole year, Drew Lock could take the job and run with it. The other one is I think I'm with Mr. Scampers in the chat in that if I have Patrick Mahomes or one of these guys, Patrick Mahomes, there's a lot of QBs that have bye week 5 or 6. So if you end up in a spot where you have Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, Stafford, Goff, Tua, bye week 5 or 6, which is very early, there's a chance Jacoby Brissett could still be starting for the Patriots if he gets the starting job. And I think that's just, it stinks because we want the correlation to be end of season, but there's a very real possibility that he starts. That's the way that things were always done for a very long time.
Yeah, I think you're right. The betting markets are certainly telling you that you're going to see some Jacoby Brissett right now.
I'm betting that the Patriots, and then I'll get us out after this, but I'm betting that the Patriots, that they cover 8.5 week 1, because I think Jacoby Brissett's going to start for the Patriots against the Bengals. And I don't know I think Jacoby Brissett can cover that. I think Jacoby Brissett can run the boring enough flavor of football to lose by a touchdown.
My man Coop is giving out week 1 winners,
Let's
and
get
it's
out of
and
here.
it's and it's May. Make sure you hit the like button for that one.
I'm picking.
Coop is literally giving you money right
I'm
now.
picking. I'm picking the team to cover of the shirt that I'm wearing right now. So let's get
No
out of
bias,
here.
no
Dude.
bias whatsoever.
Let's get out of here. You guys always have good stuff going on at Player Profile. You tell everybody what you got going on. For me, just do us a favor. Go out and get the best ball guide now. The Fantasy Alarm Best Ball Guide is up and Adam. Fantasyalarm.com/best ball. It's got all my rankings. It's got all my takes. And it's the best way to support me and Howard and the folks you love at Fantasy Alarm so we can keep doing what we're doing. But what do you guys got going over at Player Profile? What's popping?
Yeah, so definitely check out all of my written work on playerprofiler.com. I'm dropping about 2 articles a week during the summer and the off season right now. And then I do the waiver wire column throughout the season, sort of a labor of love. Do a sleepers column, which comes out end of the week, regular season. And then, yeah, look for all of my podcasts. I podcast on Sonic Truth with Matt Kelly and Alan Soslowski. I podcast with Billy Muzio on First Class Fantasy. And then my 2 podcasts are Press Coverage and Dynasty Life. You can find those every single week at Player Profiler YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. And I'm sure we're going to have Coop, back on. Coop came on Top 10 Takeaways. Right. I was going to say Sonic Truth, but Coop crushed it with us NFL Draft Weekend with Matt and I on Top 10 Takeaways. We're going to definitely have Coop back on sometime soon. We love him in the Roto Underworld.
I filled in for Seslowski on the Sonic Truth.
Oh yeah,
I'm like it's like soccer. That I don't really know how it works, but I know that they like got players on loan and stuff. Like that's you're available for my shows. Shout out to Jax Falcone too. We got a nice little group of people that can put together a show at a moment's notice.
It's nice. I mean, if we're on loan though, what I got to call like Howard Bender and like settle up or something.
You got you got to check
it. He's gonna be like, we've been keeping track of all the Coop appearances.
Yeah, you do it. You know what? We got to get you to slide up onto the Sirius XM show. I'm gonna be filling in for Jim Bowden for Memorial Day weekend. So I will be on Thursday the 23rd, Friday the 24th, Monday the 27th. Maybe we'll sneak you in for a little segment.
I'd love it.
All right, cool, man. I'll talk to the boss man. That's it for us. We're out of here. Make sure you're liking and subscribing this channel and use promo code COOP at myffpc.com if you want to take advantage of everything from this show. The link in the description. Thank you, gang.